that are being discussed here are a good deal of importance. And so for people who are not so well informed, would you be able to just give us a brief summary of the objectives of today's discussion and possibly the causes of that discussion having to take place?
Well, state lands have been an issue since at least 10 years, maybe even longer. I've been involved in legislation or legislative efforts over the last 6 or 8 years, and I think what we're talking about is there's about 10,000 acres, square miles of state lands that we got as a state from the federal government. And when we got those lands in the Enabling Act, there was a senator from back in the Midwest that put a stipulation in there that all state lands had to be sold at public auction in a competitive bid. And he did that for a reason, because all the states before Arizona and New Mexico had already given and wasted their state lands. So the beneficiaries literally got nothing. And we have this is a beneficiary trust that has possessory rights in those lands, or financial benefits from them. So what we get into every time is that there are disparate interests that come together on this. You've got the ranchers, you've got developers, you've got the cities and towns, and counties, as I mentioned. And then you have the 12 or 13 beneficiaries.
Right.
And the biggest beneficiary in there is the school trust.
Okay.
They get by far the greatest amount of money that comes out. So
right.
You have this little pot that gets stirred up every time you start these things. Okay. So today I think was a good start. It looks like they've done a lot of homework in some areas, which is important to do if you're going to run legislation like this.
Right.
If they're going to look to bring it forward as a bill, and I've had probably 4 bills. The last one was one that I did last year with the Sierra Club, basically on land preservation on the military basis.
Right.
And that one, with very little campaigning, failed by about 10,000 votes.
Right.
So hopefully we're going to bring that back.
Right.
Now, how we piece these things together is going to be critical in the massing, because if you have too many of these similar type issues on the ballot, nothing passes.
Right, okay.
I got there before when we had Prop 105 and 106. That was the first serious confrontation we had between 2 different interest groups and benefit.
Right.
And I think we all learned from that, and everybody's trying to take steps now to come up with something that will pass muster, gain the support of everybody in the majority.
Okay.
And move forward.
Right.
Okay. To answer your question succinctly, this is the beginning of a process with one group that is putting together a plan to preserve different pieces of state lands into the future without obviously impinging upon those that are developable, augmenting the beauty and the development around them by increasing their value by having those lands set aside.
Right, understood. So what, I guess in very simple terms then, we have, obviously there's a natural wilderness that we want to protect, but there are a number of entities that they still have to accomplish certain objectives. And we're looking at ways to achieve that without stepping on anyone's toes or ruining the environment.
Right.
Would you be safe to summarize it?
That's the easiest way to say it, because if it's an initiative, they'll go and get the votes and put it on the ballot. Right. If it's a referendum by the legislature, it has to go through the House and the Senate, and then we put it on the ballot.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of things that can happen in that process.
Well, Senator, I'm not going to detain you much longer, but just 2 more points. In very simple terms, what would you say would be the benefits for Arizona residents? And in achieving those benefits, what would you say are the biggest challenges to overcome?
Well, that's an attitudinal issue, and it really depends on your opinions, individuals' opinions on that.
Right.
But I think in the broad view, we have a lot of land that will never be developed. We have some gems in the middle of that probably should be set aside for future citizens, are my kids, your kids, in that to enjoy. Because as has been said here, once they're gone, there's nothing.
Right.
Because you've just built up everything around it. And there are areas that I think are critical to, one, help develop the state, help do the building and development that we need. Two, they enhance that. Three, they set aside the natural beauty. As I can remember when we first came here, we go down to Casa Grande and looked at it, and that was awesome to us. There's some historical value in that. So, long story short, there are lands that, by setting them aside, can enhance the value of those adjacent lands. If they're done correctly, they won't impact the ability of either people to utilize those lands for ranching or for development. And it's how do you mix all that together?
Right.
The other side that nobody's mentioned, we have mining interests out there, and there was a lawsuit filed, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, because they weren't, the state land department and Governor Napolitano was not signing the lease permits, so you had leasehold interests that weren't being continued for people that needed those minerals.
Right.
And I think it was California Cement, anyways, it's a Tucson cement company, they filed a lawsuit. And the court held that they wouldn't do anything until after the election. So it failed at the ballot, and then the court made them execute the lease agreements. So just some of the history and the fighting that goes on, and the politics that can get involved in those issues.
So today has been a good start.
Well, I think it's a good start for them. It shows what they've done in District 2 as far as the polling and the community support and the rest of it. I don't know where that goes statewide, and where in the other areas of the state what kind of problems they have. But if you don't start positive, you're going in the wrong direction.
Quite so. Senator, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
And I know I've fed you a lot, but...
That's all right. More than enough is better than not enough, sir.
Well, there's so much history, and Jake Flake and I got involved in this, and Jake had been involved with it much longer than me, and that's probably 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer when we first started getting it. I first started getting it.
Well, I'm certainly glad to be back in Arizona.